Hello and welcome back to The New Whovian, the podcast in which I, Bendigo Blue, aka The New Whovian, discuss the latest episodes of, you guessed it, Doctor Who. But before we get into the breakdown and dissection of this week's episode, Wish World, the part 1 of this season finale, just a few notes. From this point onwards, we will be diving into things in spoilerific detail, so please, if you haven't watched the episode yet, and you do intend on doing so, please just step away now, maybe leave a little subscription, that would be much appreciated, but otherwise, yeah, spoilers from this point onwards. Additionally, I do just want to note that, this is a Wish World review. But Bendigo, you haven't reviewed the other video. Yes, I know. I am well aware of the fact that I have not reviewed the other Doctor Who episodes. I reviewed the first 3 and then got very busy, so was unable to do so. My plan from here is obviously review Wish World this week, review the finale next week, and then do Lucky Day, Story in the Machine, and then the Interstellar song contest in the weeks after that, and then return to normal snack break uploads. So with that little ramble out of the way, let's dive into Season 2, Episode 7, Wish World. So this episode kicks off in a really exciting way. We have the Rani coming to meet the 7th son of a 7th son of a 7th son, and courtesy of David Tennant's little sprinkling of the salt, which we will definitely be dealing with more next episode, and the consequences of that and how people deal with that. I've seen a lot of talk online about how the Doctor's going to have to sort of, face his ability to mold worlds and have so much power, if you will, which I think is definitely a very good idea. So that's going to probably be discussed next week. But anywho, the Rani comes along, steals the 7th son of the 7th son, who is the god of wishes. Very cool. And it later becomes clear with a toy maker laugh that yes, he is indeed, or Little Babby Boy is indeed very much a part of the Pantheon. And really enjoying, again, in this season, the repetition of that ha 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 ha. And almost literally from the episode, after David Tennant does sprinkle that salt, everything changes. And I think, that's that new direction for the show is something that's been continued to be approached very well throughout this season, and indeed all episodes really since that salt sprinkling. So definitely big up for that. We also then have this amazing terrifying demonstration of the Rani's power. The Rani turns a woman called Violet into Violet, a man who's described as a wise old owl into quite literally a wise old owl, and in what is possibly one of, I don't want to get into use of hyperbole here, but it was possibly one of the most sort of nail-bitingly excruciating moments in Doctor Who this season. The Rani, just as their father warns these sweet little toddlers to run for their lives, she turns them into ducks. And it's all very panic-inducing and distressing. But it does indeed show the Rani is a force to be reckoned with. And then later she gets her Green Goblin scooter out, but we won't talk about that. Anywho, after that, we then cut to the Doctor and Belinda in bed together. Yes, that's right, the Doctor and Belinda lying in bed together, and they kiss. And it is such a shocking moment. I think it's so amazingly executed in this episode, because that is one of the last things you would expect for this episode to start with. I had always really pictured this with a magic faraway tree type scenario, in that the Doctor and Belinda, oh, we're nearly home, Belinda. Oh, the TARDIS, we've landed somewhere else. How has this happened? And his wish world. Oh, your wishes come true. That's sort of Enid Blyton-esque fun. But no, we are straight into the action, or really lack thereof, as this suburban utopia, or dystopia as it later becomes apparent that it is, plays out in front of us. The Doctor and Belinda are staying in bed together, and Captain Poppy, hey, if you've just dropped into Doctor Who, if you watched Space Babies, went nope, and then tried season 2, Space Babies is now possibly could become one of the most, with some of the things that are being suggested here, Space Babies could somehow become one of the most important episodes of Doctor Who ever. How exactly that has happened, I just don't know. But hey, well, that's the universe that we live in. Or don't live in, I guess. Things play out as they do in this really WandaVision style fashion. And I was sitting there watching this saying to my mom, oh, it's so WandaVision, I love it. And then I looked at other reviews of it online, and everyone's like, yes, it's very WandaVision. And I went, yes, yeah. I was very pleased with myself. So yes, things continue, and it's revealed that Conrad is essentially the creator of this reality. And he, as a result of Mrs. Flood and the Rani's interventions and the some son, aka God of Wishes, as neatly stolen by the aforementioned Rani, Conrad has molded this reality around his wishes and preferences, and he essentially acts as a total god here. He's on the TV, he reads stories of the Doctor that is neatly formatted. It's basically the first Harry Potter, which I appreciated as a little reference. I know that was probably, I think they put that in there as quite an obvious thing to spot, but yeah, definitely fun the way that cover was deliberately designed. And yeah, it is his beliefs that make up this whole world. And whenever somebody has a moment of doubt in this reality, just a cup sort of slips through a table. They are literally called slips, and smash, it's on the ground. So we only get more ideas of this as it becomes very clear that it's, the woman does her, stays in and she works, and her husband, not work, she takes care of home life, and then the husband goes out and he works for a living. And the Doctor is just about to leave for work, or John Smith. I love it when they... Well, I love it and hate it, because it's always very panic-inducing when they bring out the good old John Smith stuff. But just as John Smith is attempting to leave for work, Ruby appears. And it's the first time that Ruby and the Doctor have actually interacted on screen since last year's finale. And it becomes clear very, very quickly that everything is wrong. We already know that everything is wrong, but it's getting wronger. So Ruby shows up and she tries to assure the Doctor, not sure, but she tries to reveal to the Doctor that something is terribly wrong, as we as the audience know that it is. Essentially, Belinda informs the secret police on her, and Ruby is forced to run away. It is then that the Doctor goes out onto this lovely suburban street and sees Mel. This, again, is the first time we've seen Mel since the finale, and she's, wheeling out her slip bin, and they have a nice little chat. And I think something that I hadn't noticed, but I saw pointed out in the comments of a video somewhere, is, and I think it really just highlights how tightly packed and designed this episode is. It's a bit like Joy to the World, which was an episode that I really enjoyed, and it definitely felt I picked up a lot of the key points on, but equally as I looked around online and spoke to people and even family who I'd been watching it with, it became pretty clear that it was so tightly packed that everybody had sort of come away with different things, and some people had missed other things, and etc., etc. I think this is very true of this episode. It's so tightly packed that I totally missed the fact, for example, that actually Mel's bin is so full of slips that she would be dobbed in, if you will, if anybody else lived with her. But she's alone, so nobody does dob in her dance. And I think that really fits in with a lot of the later connections of, the Doctor's companions and people. Some of the people interacting around the Doctor can sense that something is wrong here, and that obviously later becomes clear in the following sequences and events. Also, Mel has a very interesting line, which is, yes, what are you doing this May bank holiday? Yes, as I am alone and I have no parents, no children, I will just sit in contemplative silence, and I will be happy about it and be glad that I am alone. And the Doctor sort of laughs and is like, yes, all good. And again, it's just another one of Conrad's sort of crazy ideas that, as the audience we obviously could see, is crazy. It's just this idea of, yes, well, a man marries a woman, and they fill their overly traditional roles in society. And then after that, if you're alone, well, you just have to deal with it and not bother anyone with your aloneness, because there we go. After that, there's then giant dinosaur things in the sky. And I have seen some people point out that why? Sorry, what? Why was this part of Conrad's ideal reality? But it's sort of just something I've accepted. They looked cool, and the Rani needs somewhere to live. So the Doctor then goes off to work. And meanwhile, while he's at work, Belinda and her family have a chat. And it's the first time we've seen Belinda's mum. And I've actually seen a lot of people also that we haven't seen Belinda's dad yet, but have had a lot of references to him. So I think the further and further we get into the season, the less likely I think it is they kill off Belinda, but the more likely I think it is that we find out something drastic about Belinda's dad, or they kill him off, or something along the lines of that. So they have a chat, and essentially, very WandaVision style, it becomes apparent that, this literally could have been in WandaVision. I'm not trying to accuse anybody of plagiarism here. I'm just a big WandaVision fan. And because Belinda realizes that none of her family can remember when Captain Poppy was born and how long she was in labor for and all that sort of stuff. And Belinda really freaks out. There's a slip, and Belinda runs off into the forest, and is absolutely terrified. Because, again, the Doctor's companions are beginning to realise here something is wrong, as is often the case in these John Smith type scenarios. Then the Doctor's at work, and he's at a sort of, I can't remember, they changed unit up, and it was really good, the new acronym they had for it. Anyway, he goes to work at unit, and he sits next to Colonel Ibrahim. And you know what? I know this is dystopian reality and all that jazz, but I wouldn't mind. I really wouldn't mind an office spin-off. It's like, instead of the American office, is the Doctor's office. It's like, instead of, get rid of that war between the land and the sea rubbish. Yeah, I know Lucky Day was great, but I'll take an office, and the Office style spin-off season in which Colonel Ibrahim and the Doctor sort of just have Jim and Dwight type antics going on. I would pay good money to watch that. So they then end up talking about how Colonel Ibrahim fancies Kate Stewart. And again, another really tightly knit little thing I hadn't picked up on, because there's just so much good stuff in this episode. But Colonel Ibrahim, or the Doctor said to Colonel Ibrahim, well, then she wouldn't have to work, would she? Or Colonel Ibrahim says something like that. Because again, it's presumed you will marry, you will go off, you will have children. Mother, stay at home. Father, go off to work. All of that, and the Doctor says, oh, don't worry, Colonel Ibrahim, you're a beautiful man. Who wouldn't want to go on a date with you? And Colonel Ibrahim, in what is really an equally horrifying but also hilarious scene, Colonel Ibrahim, this trusted figure of authority, he's usually such a big fan of the Doctor and who we just love, just really freaks out. And there's a slip, and we can begin to see that the Doctor's beginning to maybe notice that something is slightly off. Then Unit and Co spot the Rani flying through the sky on her little scooter. Very good. And I believe it's at this point that we cut into the honeycomb dome, which is what I'm going to call it. So that's essentially where Mrs. Flood and the Rani are controlling things from. And I have to say, I was initially, not only is that an amazingly well-designed set with amazing details, but I was initially a little skeptical as to Mrs. Flood being a Rani and the new Rani being the Rani, but I actually felt that it really allowed time for both actors to shine there, because we sort of got to see a new depth and side to Mrs. Flood that I felt had been sort of lacking somewhat in some of the, don't get me wrong, Anita Dobson has been absolutely amazing, but was sort of lacking in just some of the, mysterious, hello, I'm here in the corner type stuff that we've got in previous episodes, and was a bit disappointed when last week she was like, yes ma'am, I said that. I didn't really want her to just turn into a comedic sidekick, if you will. But actually, I think it really enhances both Ranis, and the dynamic they have going on there is certainly very interesting. Yeah, definitely something that I think we'll come back to in later episodes. Then Miss Flood gives Conrad a sandwich from memory. Basically at that point we're told the full extent of the Wishworld stuff. I have seen some people particularly Ellie Littlechild from Who Culture, saying that actually, in a Who Culture video, saying, would it not have been better if WandaVision style, we didn't know what was happening. And it's not something I had originally thought of, but actually I would have to really agree. I think that little bit of additional mystery might have been quite helpful, but equally, I'm nitpicking here. This was such a great episode, if you couldn't tell already from my various opinions. But anywho, they then, Conrad has a sandwich, all good, and we cut back to the home where the doctor, aka John Smith, is lying awake at night, having a chill. Well, he's not having a chill. He's watching the TV when, bam, Rogue pops up, and yes, Rogue is back. Love it. So pleased that Rogue has made a return. Absolutely one of the highlights of season 1. So glad to have him back. My one critique would be that the special effects for his scene maybe weren't quite as good as I maybe would have liked them to be. But anywho, that's fine. He pops up and he says, "Tables don't do that." What a line. And the doctor, surprise, surprise, he also begins to freak out. Get this. Everybody's panicking a little bit. So, yeah, so the doctor realizes that everything is wrong. And then, before long, the realization becomes clear that Belinda has phoned the secret police on the doctor. And as the doctor is wrangled away and she's in tears, apologising, it then becomes clear that Belinda's mum has also dobbed her in. And it is really, I'm sort of laughing about it here because it seems somewhat comedic. Oh, she dobbed her husband in, her mum dobbed her in, the granny's probably going to dob the mum in next. But it's just, it shows how horrifying this reality is. And it's just, and obviously there have been periods in history in secret police states where that sort of thing has happened. And I thought this just made a really good point of emphasising that. So really liked that. Then, after that, the doctor and Belinda go off into the honeycomb dome and things begin to unravel quite quickly. To be honest, there's not loads to dissect here, apart from us getting to the point at which the doctor meets the Rani, and that slow realization, that slow panic, and of course the reunification, even though it was only about 5 minutes, of Belinda and the doctor is really nice stuff. And then, eventually, after an intense showdown, it all falls apart. The Rani is allowing her honeycomb dome to collapse onto this entire reality somehow. And the doctor falls into the abyss, into the void, leaving us on quite a cliffhanger. And something that another thing I didn't notice, there was just so much in this episode. The doctor shouts as he falls, "I have a daughter, Poppy is real." And he is at this stage, full incarnation of the doctor. You would presume he has his full understanding back. And he shouts, "Don't you know what this means?" And although some people have argued online that some bit of John Smith may have remained, but to be honest, I think the doctor is, I don't feel like they would leave that line in there of "I have a daughter, Poppy is real." You know what that means. Especially on that cliffhanger finale, without being aware of what the fans are going to conspiracy out of that. Although maybe they would. Who knows? Anyway, that is the end of the episode, but I've really only acknowledged one or two perspectives there. We have ignored the perspectives of both Ruby and, we've acknowledged Ruby, and Shirley from Unit. Now, Ruby and Shirley meet, and after initially being, "Oh no, I can't talk to you," Ruby sort of clicks in again that, wait, no, this is just Conrad speaking, this is his propaganda, this is wrong. And eventually Shirley takes her to where disabled people are living. And I think this is such an interesting concept, the idea that Conrad, and I know lots of people have pointed this out, but I just think it's so clever, and I want to emphasize that even more if I can. But the idea that it's not that Conrad is pro or anti-disabled people, he just doesn't bother to think about them. And again, another thing, I'm making it sound like I didn't get anything for this episode, but I promise I did, that I didn't quite pick up on was the fact that, and I later thought and was like, wow, yeah. Like Shirley has a top of the range wheelchair, and none of them need medication or anything. They just survive perfectly fine because Conrad does literally just walk past them and ignore them. And thanks to his perception of the world, as does everybody else from that time onwards. And I think that's just such a clever concept, and it was executed so well. Also, YouTuber Tharis was in the scene, which is absolutely amazing. I watched his video yesterday and just so cool. Very, very nice. I thought that was amazing. I want to add any other YouTubers, Russell, we're all here. But yeah, very, very nice. So that whole concept was just really good. And then Shirley being, as we would expect her to be, being an amazing member of UNIT, her sort of going, we don't just sit around all day, we are planning a rebellion. Just so good. And I realise that's an aspect of this episode I've sort of forgotten here, but I thought that was just another, like, a real highlight of the episode, actually allowing us into that ground level perspective and just further highlighting how this world works, and obviously Conrad's twisted view of existence, if you want to call it that. So yeah, really good. All in all, massive fan of this episode. I have to say, solid 9, maybe even 10. If I'm going 9, it's more just due to the fact that this is part 1. I wasn't expecting this to be as part 1 as it was actually, but from being launched straight into it to just the concept and how well executed and tightly packed this episode is. I know I've said it again and again and again, but it's so true. Or I found it to be so true. Such a solid episode. Fingers crossed they're going to stick the landing with next week's The Reality War. There's certainly a lot to be wrapping up, especially if you take into factor we could or could not be dealing with a Shooty Gut War regeneration or promise thereof. So who knows? We'll have to wait and see. For now, though, I've been Bendigo Blue. This has been a Hungry Cat Bar production. Have a very nice day. This is Snack Breaks, the new Whovian podcast.